It contains preliminary information about possible Saudi links to the attackers that hadn't been corroborated or checked out at the time.
He was putting all that down, wasn't he?
Wait a minute. If it hadn't been corroborated or checked out at the time, why was it classified immediately?
Exactly.
That's just stupid arguments, okay? But then he goes on to say this. He says that the preliminary information made a very clear judgment there was no evidence indicated the Saudi government as an institution or Saudi officials individually financially backed Al-Qaeda.
Why would he say that?
Didn't do it.
Unbelievable. Why did he say that?
It doesn't matter if you can say the Saudi officials didn't back Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda didn't do 9/11. Bin Laden didn't do 9/11. The Bush administration blamed Bin Laden, which was a perfectly sound judgment by the part of the Saudis. That's what they wanted to have happen. The Bush administration would go after Bin Laden and Saddam Hussein. They're long-term enemies in the region.
And that's exactly what we did.
And we obediently did it. So now Brennan comes out and says that you'll find no evidence that they financially backed Al-Qaeda. That's the whole point, Brennan. We're saying Al-Qaeda didn't do it. That we're saying is the Saudis did it. He's saying you have no evidence that the Saudis backed Al-Qaeda. Of course not. They hated Al-Qaeda and they hated Bin Laden. He was an enemy of the state. So anyways, I guess my point here is we're never going to be told the truth by the system as it exists. And I know so many of you out there want Bernie Sanders to win. And I think Bernie, if he were to win, if Hillary were to just get overwhelmed, this book, for instance, overwhelmed the Clintons with so much illegal criminal wrongdoing, so much selling of State Department votes to get arms to foreign governments that shouldn't have been armed, but if they gave money to the Clinton Foundation, they got to go ahead and buy Hillary's State Department to be armed. Now, these things are criminal. If that happens and Hillary loses, then we get Bernie. And I do believe Bernie is a sincere man.
Maybe that's why he's staying in.
I believe you're right. I think that is why he's hanging in there. He's kind of like old school like I am. It ain't over till it's over.
That's right.
That was a catcher with the Yankees.
I'm continuing. One more question about Cruz, and I want to talk to you about these Russian jets that have been buzzing our planes. But why did Cruz get out? Because you think he ran out of money? Because he could have hung in there and at least become an issue at the convention.
Well, what would have happened, Jeb Bush already went public a few days before that and said that Jeb Bush came out public and said he wanted to see a contested convention, and that was meaning, Cruz, you have to stay at the race. And I don't think it was a money issue. It's never a money issue if it's a contested convention. I think sincerely, I'm not going to blame him for this. I don't blame anybody for getting out of the race when it's going to get this ugly. Not everybody's made up of the stuff to do that kind of battle verbally when they start saying, your father knew something about the JFK assassination,
right.
Your mother, when it starts getting ugly. A lot of people don't have the stomach for it. I've seen it too often. It affected the guy I worked with, Jack Metcalf. When things got ugly, it was very hard for him to stay in and each election every 2 years, no matter how ugly, because he was very much like Bernie Sanders in many ways. He's a very kind, Christian, loving man, father, very genteel, old school. But he had a tough crew backing him. He had some tough people on his crew, and they helped moderate some of that. So he stayed in the fight. I'll be surprised. I'd be very surprised if Bernie quit.
No, I don't think he will.
I think Bernie's a tough little bugger.
He's going to go to the convention.
He's going to take it to the wall.
Yeah, so will, and I don't know why he's in, but Kasich is going to take this all the way to the wall, too. Why?
Again, it's a lost cause, and if you're a man like I am, I suppose, I don't mind taking on lost causes. Isn't there a Catholic medallion for that, Saint somebody?
I'm sure there is.
Saint for the lost cause. I'm pretty sure I fit into that category. So I don't have a problem with those kinds of people. But I do believe that the pot's been stirred, and Brennan just shot across the bow of everybody. Nobody's going to go after Saudi Arabia, no matter who's in the White House.
Oh, by the way,
it's
St. Jude Thaddeus you're talking about.
Okay.
Well, we have all kinds of information.
So anyways, again, I think you're not going to see any fundamental change. I'm sorry to be the one guy that says it the way it is, but I can't bring myself to be popular by saying that good things might happen? I don't believe so. I don't believe the White House is built to take the ship of state and change its course.
No,
I think we already know, admittedly, your listeners have to know pretty well, that we are governed by a corporate global empire that has no relationship what happens here domestically.
Corporate taxes will get slashed even more, and then the average American will end up paying more.
Yes.
It's going to happen.
In the end, the people who pay will pay. And don't forget, back in the woodwork, brewing back in the woodwork is something that I've always talked about quietly amongst my own people, not always publicly, but if they want to silence the American people, if the American people get revolutionary, if the American people truly get fed up and they're in the streets, not only will Homeland Security and the military be there to make sure the violence doesn't spread, but they have it in the works. They're talking about it right now. This may be the first time some of your listeners have heard it, except that they've heard me before. There is a plan to grant everybody over the age of 18 a universal, guaranteed income.
That is an interesting twist. Okay, Russian
form in the European Union. It was translated, and I watched him for the full 20 minutes that he spoke. Vladimir Putin does not want a war with the West. He wants peace with the West. But I watched his body language and how he approached the issues. He's also telling the American people, if you're listening to him at all, you know, I do not want war. I want peace. I want America and Russia and China to sit down, talk to each other, come to an agreement, and see to it that all nations' national interests are discussed. All nations' national interests are discussed. Now, you and I know that that's not going on today. The corporate empire that's leading the Western hegemony throughout the world has no interest in what the people of Syria, Libya, the Congo, Nigeria, they don't care what anybody thinks.
See, I
care what the leaders think.
I think some Russian generals are taking over.
I don't think they're taking over. I think,
calling the shots?
No, I think Putin, nobody calls the shots on Putin. Don't ever believe that story.
Okay.
Putin is fully in charge. But Putin will allow it to look as though, you know, maybe this particular general may have misunderstood, but he did. He got the message.
He got the message. I mean, they're buzzing us.
A message.
They're buzzing us on purpose.
Go to war.
He will if he has to.
Yes, he will go to war. And I think that is a real threat for the American people, because any kind of large, conventional, world-type war, whether it's Russia, China, or both, America will lose.
This time around.
We will lose this time around. First of all, why do you think John Kerry, for the first time in 8 years of the Obama administration, Kerry is out saying that he's not comfortable with an all-volunteer army any longer? He believes we should be looking at the draft and drafting young women at the same time. I guarantee you Trump will be really hard to manage if he's in the White House and they want to institute the draft. Now, that's the one thing that I know Trump could buck. It's really tough for Congress to go against him. Hillary, on the other hand, are you kidding me? She would love to see the draft, and she would love to see young women drafted and sent into combat. That's who she is.
I think the tensions between Russia and China towards us is going to get worse.
Yes, but I agree, because, like I said, no matter who goes into the White House cannot change the direction of the corporate regime that already commands the control of the House, the Senate, and the Cabinet.
The regime that Eisenhower warned us about years ago.
Yes, that regime. The one that Dave Lincoln talked about as a corporate entity, that it would steal the rights of the people and use their money to seize control of the government. The oligarchy, Teddy Roosevelt said, was unabiding in his mind, that it could not function on American soil, because he saw wealth like Donald Trump's wealth, like Dick Cheney's wealth. He referred to them as enlarged pawnbrokers.
What's going on with the whack job in North Korea? If Iran does videos of nuclear explosions showing our cities blowing up. I think we do something about it. Why aren't we doing anything with this guy?
Well, because he has no capability of doing any of these things.
Today?
In his Middle Ages kind of thinking, he is very primitive in his thinking. It's what keeps him in power by keeping his own citizens cowed that he's the only one that can save them. And they look to him in hero worship in that regard.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's just smoke and mirrors, and we're not taking it serious because, to be honest with you, I don't think China will ever let him get out of control. Ever.
Are we banking on that?
We don't have to bank on it. The corporate regime that controls most of the world right now is a Western corporate for-profit regime that China is in lockstep with. They do not have a problem with it. Their corporatism as state-owned enterprises is in perfect alignment of our corporatism here in the West.
So they let him play with his little missiles and let him do his thing.
Yeah, because it's also effective as keeping America and Americans, the people, paying attention to him, the North Korean, as opposed to what's happening in the Pacific Ocean, in the islands, in the sea, Japan. That entire contested region with China is building up an enormous naval force to defend. And that's the one thing that bothers me of all. Nothing bothers me going on. I know what our regime is. I know what the corporatism has in mind for our future. I know Trump can't fix it. Hillary won't fix it. And Bernie Sanders will not make the election. But I do know this. China and Russia and India, South Africa, BRICS, Australia, maybe even Germany, are taking all of this very seriously. They are expecting a conventional war confrontation with the corporate regime that I'm describing, not with America per se. It's not with you and I. There's no hatred towards the American people being discussed here. This is strictly at Russia, China, and other countries that have joined them in the BRICS nations. Those 11 nations, they're getting sick of being pushed around by this corporate regime that runs the Western empire that does not represent America.
Unfortunately, we're going to get pulled in on it.
Yeah, because we're the ones that will get drafted and sent to war.
That's right.
That's the problem. But the American people will be lied to, and they will be told that this is something, China and Russia against us as America. It isn't. Syria was a line in the sand. The Ukraine was a line in the sand against the corporate Western hegemony of the World Trade Organization, the World Bank, the IMF, Bank for International Settlements, NATO, and the Pentagon acting as a spear point of that corporate regime. It's about that. Not us, not America. It's about that. And if we don't grow up, and if we don't fix it ourselves as citizens, if we don't make Congress fix that, no president has that capability.
Don't you think it would have been easier for Assad to simply say, I'll be in the club, I'm okay with it, instead of fight it?
Assad didn't have any choice. He was about to go the way of Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein.
That's right.
So
and he still may.
And he still may. But Russia stepped in and said, we've had enough of American hegemony, conspiring for regime change in areas of the world that don't concern you. So stay out of Syria.
Russia saved his tail.
Yes, Russia saved his tail. But at the same time, Putin did say, I don't really care if Assad survives or not. This is not about Assad. This is about the national interest of Russia and the Syrian people. And he wasn't going to see another domino fall in the Middle East or North Africa because of Western corporate hegemony. In other words, Goldman Sachs, Halliburton, Brown and Root, General Electric, he said that's enough.
Enough. And you know what's so strange, Craig, and we're almost at the top of the hour. We'll talk about it again next hour. It seems like every country we get involved in, it gets screwed up later on. I mean, Iraq is still out of control. Car bombings, all this, it never ends.
That's because there was never an effort to do anything in behalf of the Iraqi people.
Nothing.
Assad's people, the Syrians, the people of Libya. The people are never part of this. There's no democracy in anybody's head, okay?
Craig, stay with us. We'll come back. Final hour. Phone lines are open.
Maybe all churches. They tend to have a corporate empire just like these multinational corporations.
Well, they're all for profit, let me tell you, even though they're supposed to be not for profit.
There's some truth to that.
Yeah.
But, what I'm arguing is that we have a constitution and we're a free republic. And even the most cynical leftists on the planet, at Berkeley and Boston and MIT, the most cynical of the left professors, and I've gone to their lectures. I've actually seen Henry Steele Commanger talk for maybe an hour, and it was at a Council on Foreign Relations dinner, and I was a member at the time. I had joined the Houston branch as a corporate businessman, and I was embarrassed to be in the room. How much that man hated this country and its founding. And all I can tell you is Hillary Clinton, Obama, George Bush Jr., and the Bush family, they hate how this country was founded, the Constitution, and the fact that it's a free republic based on democratic principles. Collectively, to a man and a woman, they hate that, and that is what has to be reinstated. That's what's been destroyed.
What will Bill Clinton's role be if Hillary gets elected?
I think he'll be booed everywhere he goes. I think people, in fact, you know what? I do know this demographically. Young women are not voting for Hillary Clinton.
No,
She's married to Bill.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. It's going to be an interest. I got to tell you one thing, Greg. As frustrating as all this has been, watching this all unfold, it's kind of exciting to watch.
Well, it is. It's kind of like, if you're one of those Christians that believe in the end times, I mean, it could be a hoot. Me personally, I'm not afraid of the four horsemen. I'm going to shoot the first three. I'm just not worried about that.
The fourth might get you.
The fourth might get me. I always, hold back one round for myself. I'm not that cocky. But no, the world is going to get fundamentally ugly under the next White House, whoever controls it, because the regime has now been sent a message. That's the thing that's happened that's more important than who wins. Doesn't matter who wins. We're not at a place that change can be made, but this country just sent the elite, the oligarchy, the very people that go to the Bohemian Club and have a cigar and 28-year Scotch single malt in their hand, and they used to laugh at America. They're not laughing right now. Because they know there's a reason for Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, and it is a lot of Americans are really fed up.
This is the Arab Spring in our own little way, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But unfortunately, we're not as well informed as most of the Muslims were in their countries about their regime.
That's true. Let's go to Sherry in Memphis, Tennessee, east of the Rockies. Hello, Sherry. You're up with us.
Hi. My question is, what about the financial crisis that we see? And I have a third question. You haven't talked about ISIS, and ISIS is, people of ISIS are willing to kill people and whereas maybe Putin and China don't want to work. ISIS in the Middle East did.
All right, now let's let you start with ISIS first, Craig,
Okay.
and we'll move our way.
This is one of the things that I'm going to be doing for a very long time. ISIS was created with the help of the United States, Israel, Saudi Arabia. The first members of ISIS were trained in Jordan. They are still being trained. There are American and British special ops training them, arming them, financing them. They were brought into fruition by this regime I'm describing. I'm not going to say the United States. America didn't do it. People that control what takes place in those areas of intelligence that created ISIS.
I call them the puppet masters.
Exactly. They are puppet masters, and we really are the idiot puppets at this point. We haven't got a clue, most of us, that we created ISIS because we couldn't take out Assad of Syria because Russia stepped in and drew a line and said, no, you're not going to go in with American and NATO firepower and take Assad out like you did Gaddafi, Hussein, and Afghanistan, and everywhere else that we're doing.
Right.
And when that happened, they simply changed gears and they created ISIS. We have a memo stating that creation, including the no-fly zone.
We've talked about their white tennis shoes and their new cars and their Humvees.
We even know for a fact the State Department had to admit it because of an inquiry who sold them all those white Toyotas.
Yeah.
Every one of them identical, a whole fleet of them.
Where'd they come from?
The United States sold them to them. And we knew who they were. Why do you think they're dressed all the same and they're dressed like they are? It's a regime that's a false regime. It is a puppet regime to try to take out Assad. But they're also protected. The no-fly zones leave them areas to have a safe haven, to recoup, rearm, eat, sleep, rest up, and go back and fight again.
But the Russians are pounding them now.
That's the one thing that Putin is doing. Now you can understand Putin better. Putin isn't there to protect Assad. He's there to say, what America and the corporate regime is doing goes no further.
We're coming back for final phone calls on Coast to Coast.